That was really good.
We make good time. And Softie, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. We don't do it a lot, the two of us,
No,
but
definitely do it more.
whenever we do, I feel like you're such a knowledgeable, well-spoken guy, I have to say.
I think opinionated is the word you're looking for. I'm always happy to be put right when I get things wrong, so please jump in.
I'm not saying you're not.
Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from Good Morn, and I'll be your host as you, I, and our international Hansa accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Sintra, across the continent. Well, today is the season premiere of Netflix's The Witcher Season 4. We'll cover the show in Season 9 of the podcast after Tower of Swallows, but in the meantime, head over to the Hansa Discord for discussions with our local community. There are a lot of ways that fans around the world celebrate the season premiere. Like Charli mentions on her introduction, I'm so looking forward to seeing the amazing spread that she's definitely cooking today. I'll be watching somewhere in New York, and I hope that if you choose to watch the show, you enjoy the ride, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and feedback. As always, thank you to our patrons and our producer-level patrons, Katie the Redhead of Dusant, Jacob B., Charlotte from Vancouver Glamorai, the original Roach, Libby, John of Riblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Miriam of Temeria, Softie, Lisa C., and Sidna. If you would like to learn more about supporting Breakfast in Beauclair, visit patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, Charli from Austria and Softie from the UK call in for Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 4. Join us as we discuss season premiere of rituals, unreliable narrators, nesting dolls of perspectives, progressive ideas in The Witcher, the literal sword of destiny, how Ciri's weaponization complicates her victimization, and how each chapter antagonist embodies a different kind of cruelty. Without further ado, let's get to our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 4. Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. My name is Alyssa, and today we're welcoming back two members of our Hansa to the show. You'll recognize my first guest from previous episodes of Breakfast in Beauclair, covering Bottles, Appetites, and dear friend from Netflix's The Witcher, and Chapter 3 from Baptism of Fire. She studied musicology, journalism, and media, and still works in online marketing. You could find her sword fighting with Hema and perusing ancient history and archaeology. My second guest is one of this season's co-hosts. Please welcome Charli from Austria and Softie from the UK. Hello, guys. Welcome back.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Alyssa. Seems like I only saw you yesterday.
And he did. We recorded next episode yesterday, so we've had a lovely weekend together, Softie and I. And Charli, it's so lovely to see you again. It's been a minute since you've been on. What has been up? Notwithstanding the announcement this morning, it is Sunday, September 14th, that The Witcher Season 4 is now coming out in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think this episode might come out after the Netflix series premieres.
Just after?
But I'll have to look. Or
Okay.
like literally the day of. We'll see.
Oh yeah, because it's a Thursday as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it rains, it pours. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, I mean, 30th of September, we've got, the English translation for Crossroad of Ravens comes out and the audiobook on the same day, and then 30th of October, Netflix. So it's like an embarrassment of riches suddenly after a bit of a famine.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, this episode comes out the same day as the Netflix series.
Wow.
So what has been up with you? And then I feel like it would be very timely, like with a 6-week span, give our little predictions or well wishes to our future selves about what is happening on the 30th of October.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me again. It's great to see you again too. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a weird year. Like, we're renovating our flat. I guess that's new. Just got a new kitchen. So
Oh, that's fun.
looking forward to cooking all the Witcher stuff.
Yes. You do that every season, right?
I do that, yeah, every Witcher Netflix premiere. It's kind of a thing that started happening, and we've my partner and I, we've been doing it ever since. Just have a cookout. I do lots of Witcher kitchen meals, shout out. Cook some recipes, and we
Yay.
do like a whole buffet spread table. This time I can do it in my new kitchen, so that's great.
Oh, I'm so excited to see the photos. They always look so beautiful and so delicious.
Thank you. It's funny because you just mentioned Softie, the new book that's coming out in English at the end of the month. I thought it was coming out at the end of the month in German too. And I learned today that it came out on the 2nd of September and I missed it. I'm such a bad Witcher fan. So yeah, the book is out. I have yet to order and read it, but I will do that ASAP.
Anna from the Hansa, she messaged me about it, said the German version was out. And I was saying, well, don't spoil it, but what can you say?
Yeah.
And she said it's got some good jokes in it, apparently. So I'm looking forward to that.
I really thought it was later this month, but
You're just so deep in the English news.
I know, right? That must be it.
So, looking out 6 weeks ahead, what would you like to impart to your future selves and other listeners of Breakfast in Beauclair as season 4 of the Netflix series drops?
Probably say, try not to watch it all at once. Eke it out a little bit, because you know what you do every time. You watch every episode and then you're completely swollen up with it and you don't remember half of it. And it's only then when the podcast catches up with you, think, I don't remember this at all. You go back and watch it. It's a completely different show than the one that you remember. I think binge watching things is kind of bad sometimes.
That's a good point.
So no more than 2 episodes on that first day.
Huh. I think I'm gonna do 4 and then 4 on the Friday. Sorry. All that food's got to be eaten in one go, right? I can't cook a whole thing and then only watch 2 episodes. There's going to be too much food for 2 episodes.
What I loved on the Hansa recently was yourself and Alyssa and Gintari sort of celebrating the fact that autumn's on the way, and the cool jackets and the boots and all the great clothes and the sweaters and the sweater jackets, they can all come out again.
So happy, so happy. I just took a walk earlier.
So just imagining you in your cool gear with your Witcher food.
No, I'm going to be like this. I'm going to be super comfy. No leather jackets on the couch.
Yeah. I hope that Alyssa 6 weeks from now is like curled up in bed. My partner, we have like the color changing lights. So he made a setting on the lights for us to watch Percy Jackson, which is kind of like our default now setting, where it's a little bit green, a little bit orange when we watch certain kinds of films. Like he made it pink and green when we put on Wicked. But I hope that 6 weeks out, future Alyssa is like sitting in the dark with the blinds closed and just like curled up in bed watching it and not taking any fucking notes on this first watch.
Yeah.
I just want to sit and enjoy it, and I'll probably binge it. But I hope I'm all snuggled like a little bug in a rug and just having fun.
Yeah.
So as we switch gears and head into our chapter, we'll continue our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows with Chapter 4, in which testimony from Joanna Selborn and Nicklar reveals how Bonhart massacred the rats, seized Ciri, and forced her into blood sport. Here's a quick synopsis of the chapter from future Alyssa. Chapter 4 unfolds through the perspectives of Ciri and 2 unlikely witnesses, Joanna Selborn, known as Kenna, a psionic in Nilfgaard's service, and Nicklar, the coffin maker's son from jealousy. As a trial witness, Kenna recounts how Stefan Skellen, Tawny Owl, assembled a company of mercenaries at Fort Rockane, hinting that her psychic powers would be used to track someone of importance. Soon after, Nicklar was hauled before them and confessed that 4 days earlier, Bonhart had slaughtered the rats in jealousy, beheading them for the bounty and dragging away the youngest, Falca. Bonhart brought Ciri to the swordsmith Esterhazy and Vano to prepare her for combat. To her shock, Esterhazy produced a legendary blade, Ziriel, engraved with a tower and a swallow. He declared it was hers by destiny, though Bonhart withheld it, insisting the time was not yet right. Ciri was then taken to Claremont, where Bonhart and the merchant Hufnagel staged a public spectacle. Drugged and thrown into the arena, she fought for survival against armed men. The Baron of Cassidy's representative, Windsor Imbra, warned her of the endless violence that awaited her until Bonhart tired of his game. In desperation, Ciri nearly turned the sword on herself, only for Bonhart to sneer that Kaer Morhen had trained her to kill others and not herself. The chapter closes with Ciri recounting these events to Visigoda, haunted by the humiliation, pain, and the dawning recognition of the depths of Bonhart's cruelty. So now that we've gotten a synopsis on the chapter from future Alyssa, what are some of your overall thoughts and highlights and lowlights on chapter 4?
The thing that I particularly liked in this chapter was Esterhazy, the swordsmith and armourer, as they say, in Fano. It was just so refreshing for Ciri to meet someone who actually wanted to help her. He didn't want anything in return. It was just, it really stands out in this sort of miserable wasteland that there's this one person who's actually being kind to her. And then I was thinking back over it, like, when was the previous person who was nice? And it was probably the guy in the tavern when she was tied up with Kaylee, who gave her the knife so she could get away. And it's like, the two people who've been nice have both given her weapons. It's really quite extraordinary as a story goes. But that really hit me quite hard, that she just hasn't had any luck at all with anyone she's bumped into. They've all wanted something from her, even if they're otherwise being decent to her. Esterhazy as a character, I just liked him. The fact that he was wanting to talk about the workmanship on the swords and things, and Bonhart was just, no, just move on, is it good enough for her to use? And just thinking, imagine if Geralt had been there. All the other staff in the place would have been lighting the lamps. And, are you even going to get home tonight? The two of them would have just been going for it. And the other one was the stolen shipment of army bows first rears its head in this one. And I just love that, because that just runs through the rest of the saga, through the rest of this book and through The Lady of the Lake. And it keeps popping up in the notes and things from the future that we know it's a thing that just carries on for years, and I just think that's lovely that's so Sapkowski that, something like that is something he just focuses on. It's not like a throwaway. If there was a low light when they're on the way and there's someone protesting about blood sports, and how awful it is, and it's like, oh no, don't worry, it's just humans, there's no animals going to be hurt. It's, oh, that's all right then. It was a bit, bada boom dish.
The other thing that made me be like, was the Baroness,
Yeah.
who had like very descriptive language around abusing children. And even Bonhart found that disgusting. And like just the whole thing about it was just like, ugh, gross.
The little bodykin. That one.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And we sit with that for a second. Like those two moments. And I think the man protesting outside of the arena and then being okay with human cruelty, it felt very Monty Python to me.
Yes. Exactly.
So I think imagining that made it slightly more like satirical and palatable in some way. That was always what plays in my head. Obviously, I think the fighting is, as like horrifying as it is very captivating, like the way that it's written and the way that it plays out. And then hearing Kenna's side of the story, I always find her really interesting. So one of my other chapter highlights was Peter Kenny's Bonhart in the audiobook. When Peter was on the show 2 years ago, he talked about his actual experience voicing Bonhart, because Bonhart only appeared as like a brief side character in one scene in Baptism of Fire. He gave him this really technically hard voice, and then got to Tower of Swallows and Lady of the Lake and was like, oh shit, I have to do this for 2 whole books. And I do think that it's like really funny, or not just funny, but, immersive to hear this voice throughout this book. And I feel like chapter 4 is when we really start to hear Bonhart throughout Ciri's story. So yeah, that was a chapter highlight for me.
Talking about Peter Kenny, his performance is just astonishing as always in this. And one thing about, if you've sort of watched British cinema from back in the day, he does these wonderful impressions of famous actors. And Hoovenagel, he's doing this Robert Morley. He's given him a voice remarkably similar to his. They're always recognizable people that he does, quite a lot of them. So he's really, really good at, putting on impressions for people as well. So it's not just the accents. He actually picks up the modulation for the voices and everything absolutely spot on.
Yeah, he's sublime.
What were your highlights and lowlights, Charli?
Well, this is probably my second favorite Witcher book in general, but this chapter in particular was just a very depressing one, I think. I did not have a good time reading it in terms of, just how dire it was. And we have Ciri and we see what she's going through, and we hear it from other people as well with the way the story is structured, which is very interesting. And then, I don't know, it was just hard to read, what you said with the Baroness and just the way Bonhart treats her and the way even Esterhazy, I mean, he's definitely a bright light in the chapter, but I remember first time I read it, they enter his home and he was like, well, outside to Bonhart, outside you can color her and do whatever you want, but inside my walls, inside my home, you know, we show some human decency and I'm not having that inside my walls. It's like, that's great and all. And I mean, he's, you know, he's doing what he can within his means, within his walls, but there's not much more he can do.
Yeah.
And that very fact is just so sad as well.
It is interesting that, like, even in his kindness, he's still complicit
Mhm.
in, like, what happens to Ciri. So, like,
Exactly.
it is that challenging thing of, like, he's obviously had a long-term relationship with Bonhart,
Yeah.
which does complicate things. Like, he feels like the perfect morally gray Sapkowski character.
Yeah, because it's still a business relationship. He's still looking to make money, right? And ultimately, he gifts the sword to Ciri. But still, like, it's a business relationship, and Bonnard is a customer of his. And yeah,
Yeah.
like you say, he's just complicit in the fact that he's like, you can do whatever you want with her, just not in my vicinity, because I'm a good person and I don't do that. I don't put up with that. And maybe that's true, right? It's like you say, it's just morally gray. He can't do anything about it and he's aware of it. But on the other hand, it's like, would he do something about it if he could, really? I mean, he's trying, but it's just difficult and it's just hard to read. It's such a grimy world and it's treating her so badly.
It gives you some sense of the malevolence that must be just rolling off Bonhart, though.
Yeah.
Even though he's got these swordsmen in the other room that are supposed to protect him and stuff, he doesn't dare blow the whistle. You know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if nothing else, he knows that Bonhart will have Ciri's head off before anyone gets there. So he's so shocked when Bonhart gives Ciri the first sword that he's offering. You know, what the hell are you doing? You know, and the fact that she almost gets it, but can't, and he's just like, right, you know, she needs the right sword. You know, the only chance she's got that
Yeah.
she's maybe got a chance because he's clearly a lunatic and he's going to let her fight him. So she needs this one thing, and obviously the sword in question is just, you know, it's impossible that wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into the meat of Esterhazy, like giving that to Ciri. But as we look ahead to like the beginning of the chapter, we start our chapter with Joanna Selburn, who is sitting as a witness for one of the Nilfgaardians who was on trial. Both Kenna and Niklar, the coffin maker's son in jealousy, deliver testimony that frames Ciri's story. How reliable do you think these perspectives are? And what do you think Sapkowski gains by presenting Ciri's ordeal through a couple of secondhand voices?
I liked it. Some people don't like that style of narration, but I'm a huge fan of Sapkowski doing that, you know, expanding the world outside of our main characters through side characters, sometimes very, very minor characters that only show up for like a passage or two.
Yeah.
It's just smart storytelling for me because Ciri is the one who's going through this and she's experiencing major trauma. And, you know, the grittiness of the world is like making her turn towards like the darker side of herself, maybe. But we knew her when she was just a little kid and this innocent little kid. So that makes the growth for her believable, you know? But if she were the only one to recount these events that happened to her, you couldn't actually rely on that being in some way maybe skewed by her perception or something. So I think it's actually a very smart move to have it told through these outside perspectives of Kenna and Nicola because they have their own reasons, but I, for one, think that that is reliable testimony, especially Nicola, I would say, because he's just a loudmouth. He just is in it for the coin. He's not tied to anyone in there. He has no reason to lie. He's just, you know, telling high tales, shouting out at the tavern about how this and this happened, blah, 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 which draws the attention to himself in the first place. Yeah, he's just a loudmouth, but he doesn't have any like stakes in the game, so to speak, until the moment he's threatened with like lashes and stuff. I think it makes the description of what happened to Ciri throughout that whole chapter, just for better or worse, colorful.
It also allows us to ride along with these characters a bit and see things that Ciri didn't see. Because otherwise, Stefan Skellen, she wouldn't know anything about him. He would just turn up in, you know, a unicorn or whatever, just before she escapes. I think it's like, oh, okay, you know, who's this guy? So that's intriguing. There's a nice little bit of character building there with Nicola as well, because, as you say, he's been telling tall tales in the pub and stuff, and got himself noticed. So he's been dragged in, and because we're riding on with him, we know that he's been lying, because he knows it himself, that he's kind of talked himself up his role in things. And now he's had to drop that because he's got Skellen and the two sort of under commanders there all glaring at him. One of the interesting things there is that he's obviously holding out a bit, and then they sort of nudge his memory by offering to take him outside and thrash him. So it's like, yes, I remember now. But then he says about, there's going to be something happening in the flea pit. Oh, you must mean bear pit. Because he's so scared of the knout at this point, he actually says, yes, bear pit. It's as if you were there yourself. And it's like, no, actually, it was flea pit, because it's the theatre. And that is, that's the old expression for like a rundown theatre for the poor and stuff. Rundown cinemas are known as flea pits and stuff. So actually, he was absolutely right with what he was saying. And they're saying, well, no idea what a theatre's got to do with this. He must be mistaken. It must mean bear pit. So it's that whole thing that if you try and get people to tell you things under duress, that torture, someone will just tell you what you want to hear. So it was intriguing that. Nicely done, I thought.
He is reliable because the reader knows he's unreliable. Essentially.
Yes. Yes, he's honest about his dishonesty, isn't he?
Yes.
I think the interesting thing about this is like there's so many freaking layers to the storytelling that happens, because on one hand, you have Ciri, who is a little bit into the future. On the other hand, Joanna or Kenna's testimony happens at least a year into the future. So you have Joanna talking about events that happened with Ciri, and then you layer in Ciri's both like current self with Visigoda and then past self who's experiencing this. And then meanwhile, Nicklar is also in his own flashback because he's reminiscing on his conversation with Tawny Owl, and then it jumps to a separate scene with Bonhart and Ciri that he witnessed. And so it's just this little like nesting doll of stories and perspectives, which I think like yes, as I think especially a first-time reader, it's kind of convoluted to try to parse out what's what, but it is so captivating. And I think Sapkowski does a masterful job of like picking things up just as they're relevant and making sure that like every side scene adds just a little something to the story, which is just so well done. As I think as both of you have said, there's so much that we wouldn't have gotten had we been with Ciri chronologically. So I think adding both Joanna's testimony, Nicklar's recounting, and then even Ciri's own reflection, speaking to Visigoda, makes it a lot more compelling.
The characters serve the plot.
Bringing people in when it counts and stuff. We last saw Skellen talking to Bonhart back in Time of Contempt. It's like a whole book gone before we go back to that. It's like, oh, incidentally, remember these guys? It's oh, wow, okay.
Oh, yeah. I think the interesting thing here with Kenna and Nicklar, too, is that we actually see Kenna's power in use. Like, we start the chapter hearing that she's a psionic, and we don't know what that means necessarily, but we get to actually see it in action in her conversation with Esterhazy.
Yeah, I've only got some technical notes on that, really, haven't I? It does obviously call back Philippa's manipulation of the terribly wounded Mignolet brother in Oxenford, where she wants to question him, and she's pretty well reaching into his head to get information out of him. That was done a lot more cruelly than this was. It's very much a case of, what do you call it? When you wave the watch in front of someone, what's that called again?
Hypnotism?
Hypnotism, yeah. She's kind of encouraging him to unburden himself, saying, oh, you're going to have an uneasy feeling unless you unburden yourself. So that's what she's doing. She's put the sense in his head that he's feeling uncomfortable and he needs to tell her what he knows. So it's nothing that he can't do. So she's not, making him see spiders crawling out of his nose or anything awful like that. So, kind of like that.
Yeah.
The other thing it brought to mind was just the democratization of magic in Nilfgaard. I know Charlie's like very pro Nilfgaard, so I'm sure you agree with this. But
hey. I'm half memeing. Okay. Disclaimer.
All hail the great sun.
Yeah, all hail the great sun.
I'm not an imperialist asshole.
Yeah. So Vilgefortz, when he was discussing with Geralt at Thaneth, he was, saying that actually anyone can become a magician. You don't have to stay a witcher. You could be anything you want, general, a great wizard, anything you'd like, if you come and sort of join the dark side. And Geralt sort of rejects that, obviously, to look after Ciri. Geralt, she's not a great sorcerer. She's not got any power as such. She's just sort of a soldier for hire, really. Her magical abilities are recognised. And I think that's really interesting that, in the Northern Kingdoms, it's more like there's this little cabal of people who've got the power to themselves, and they've got the lodge and all this stuff. And they're, trying to control government and all sorts of things. And there's no way they're going to encourage like regular people to take up magic. They want to keep it all for themselves. So it's quite intriguing to see how a normal thing it would be to know about magic. And the judge in the court as well, he's saying, remind you, no use of magic in the courtroom, that magic is sort of commonplace almost in Nilfgaard rather than unknown. So I thought that was interesting for world building.
I think it's also interesting, actually. It makes the whole hiring a merkband to do X, Y, Z is quite a boring task, a boring thing in and of itself. But adding, giving these characters their own quirks and their own like specialty almost. Also Cyprian and Boreas and stuff like that, they get a short description of, oh, he's exquisitely brutal or whatever, and she's psionic. And it's just, it gives them some color that I think makes the whole merc band thing in itself just a bit more interesting, as opposed to just having a bunch of, cutthroats.
As we look ahead, Nerad and Sega's gender ambiguity becomes a brief point of discussion, but is dismissed as irrelevant to their value as an officer. How does Sapkowski's treatment of Nerad challenge or reinforce ideas about gender and competence, both in The Witcher and outside of it?
Dismissing it as irrelevant is the only correct take. So, next.
Yeah. I think when people read The Witcher, they are so surprised that Sapkowski includes progressive takes around trans people, around women's right to choose. I feel like this is just another thing where he's just like, yep, this is how the world works. This is how the world should work. Let's keep going. And I feel like people just don't really expect that from a series that's like 40 years old.
It is very interesting. And I think the books are full of that kind of stuff, sometimes overtly, sometimes if you read between the lines, and it's just one of the things I love about them.
I feel like this is going to be a very short discussion. Softie, anything to add?
Yeah. The other thing that you pick up is there's so many female soldiers in the saga, and it's never remarked on like, oh, and amazingly there was a woman, like Queen Maeve taking command in the field. No one bats an eyelid. She's the queen, if she wants to wave a sword around, that's fine by everyone. You've got Black Rayla, who's not just a warrior, but, a particularly fearsome, anti-elven warrior. Then you've got Teruviel amongst the elves. Again, no one's saying, oh, the women should stay behind. There's never any thought of that. And then you've got Pretty Kitty herself, the great general in the Lady of the Lake.
Free Company,
yeah. And let's not forget Ciri. At no point is anyone surprised that she can fight. They're surprised how good she is, but that's just because she's good as any kind of a fighter is. No one's sort of like, you can't expect me to fight a woman. That doesn't come up.
I mean, it does in this chapter.
Yeah, but it's not because she's a girl.
Yes.
It's because she's such a slip of a girl is what they're worried about. And then it's like, whoa, oh no, she can fight.
Yeah.
I know it's literally 3 brief paragraphs, but I think even for me as a host, like it's so nice to highlight it, as I said, because it's something I think most people wouldn't expect in science fiction fantasy work, especially in the period in which it was written. So yeah. And as we go to the next question, Esterhazy insists on gifting the sword to Ciri, quote, so that what is to come about will come about. What do you guys make of this cryptic choice, and like how does it add weight to Ciri's character arc?
It's impossible not to see this as destiny. The fact that it's a gnomish choir, so it's got a flame blade. So here's Falca, the flame person, with a flame sword, and it's got the ruined tower on it with a swallow flying above it.
The title of the book.
Yeah. He says, there's the line of destiny will take you to this tower, which is a symbol for chaos, but above the tower is the swallow, and the swallow is the symbol for hope. If you're doing this as a film, for instance, the person whose job it is to do the soundtrack at this point says, we need you to do the Destiny theme. At this point, they're on the organ and they're pulling all the stops out and just saying, here we are, folks, this is it, Destiny, But I think that's what this bit would be. He's saying, I give you this so that what needs to be can be. But he's, in some ways, at that point, he's actually talking about, you need to kill Bonhart.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
But it's so multi-layered. That line, just this foreboding, so that what may come about, it just sends shivers down my spine every time. Like I said before, this is such a depressing chapter, and so many terrible things have been happening to Ciri and keep happening to Ciri, and this is just, yeah, it just also instills hope in the reader themselves. I felt like, oh, how is she going to come out on top of this? What is she going to do? How is she going to resolve this? How is she going to get out of here? It adds a certain, I want to say, hopeful oomph to the whole situation, but also on a meta level, I feel like, because it's the first time in this whole chapter where it's like, maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, That was really cool. And then also from what we discussed earlier with Esterhazy, what you said about him, being the only one trying to, in some shape or form at least, help Ciri in this chapter, comes from that place. And he sees what's in front of him and that this man is a danger to this small girl. And he does what he can in that moment. But also, it kind of makes you think in the first instant, who are you? What do you know? Are you a psychic as well? Like, who are you? And then it's not about him. It's about what, the symbolism of what this gesture means to Ciri and to the reader as well.
I think that's great that you picked up on that as well, because with him being a smith, I was just thinking it's like Waylander the Smith, the guardian of the ways and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like she's this person who's going to be able to jump through space and time and things. It's just funny how that meshes together quite nicely. I don't think that's deliberate, though.
Yeah.
No.
It is interesting, I think, rolling off our discussion of like, yes, he's trying to do good within his means while still being complicit in her captivity and like her destruction of self and like all this other stuff. All of his actions are framed by him just kind of continually observing Ciri and Bonhart together. As you said, Charli, it seems like he wants to arm Ciri so that she's in the best possible position to do what she needs to do when she's ready to do it. And that kind of like feels like the crux of what is to come about will come about, because I think on one hand, we spoke about Esterhazy, as well as his swordsman, not really having the means to overtake Bonhart. There's no way they'll be up to their necks in blood. He probably knows that like she is the only one who can free herself or will be able to in the future. And if he's able to give her that opportunity, or at least able to arm her for that opportunity, that might be all he can do. Like you said, Softie, it's just like destiny, and this is the whole thing that happens. So, yeah.
When we look at Esterhazy as being a businessman as well, you look at the whole fact where Bonhart's saying, that, this sword isn't good enough. I said, 100 florin sword, this one's 150. And this is, brings out Swallow. And Bonhart's looking and said, I'm not sure I can afford that one. And he says, no, it's free. He says, well, thank you. So I'm not doing it for you. It's for her, the gift. And it's like, that's a mighty gift. That's 200-year-old sword and everything. I mean, Geralt's eyes lighting up when he sees Zoltan's seal. That we know that these old swords are really something.
Yeah. I wonder if it kind of also goes back to Esterhazy's protection of Ciri within his home. And if he can't protect her outside of his home, this is kind of the best thing that he can do for her as well. So maybe it's also an extension of that, of trying to make that protection last.
Yeah, I was searching in vain to see if he ever appears again, but I couldn't find him. So
one of those very minor side characters that are hugely important.
Yeah.
I feel like if this is a video game, he would have a little light on him.
Yeah, little quest marker.
Yeah. And ultimately, Esterhazy's gift to Ciri leads to her fighting in the arena under the influence of Fistek. And all of this is both a test and ultimately a performance. How do you guys think the juxtaposition of her loss of agency, as well as her instinctive swordsmanship, complicate our understanding of her as both like a victim and a killer? Do you guys think her victories here prove her strength, or is this really just proof that Bonhart has power over her?
Yeah, there's definitely been a sea change, hasn't there? She's first with the rats. She can't kill the first trapper. They say, give her a sword, make it fair and things. They're kind of amazed that she's able to move as well as she is, but she's not putting the killing blow in. And then she almost gets herself killed by someone with a crossbow, because again, she won't kill. Iskra in particular is, chews her out over it. You nearly got yourself killed, silly cow. You need to finish the job. But later she's, hacking people up quite cheerfully in public, just for basically disrespecting her. It's quite something that she seems to have become a stone cold killer in one way. And yet now with Bonhart, she's frightened, and so she should be. She gave it her absolute best shot to take him down when he had killed the other rats in front of her, and found herself helpless and unable to beat him, even at that moment of exultation she had when she thought she'd got him. And somehow he still managed to stop it. And it must be terrifying to be as good as she knows she is, to just know, I can't beat this man. There's something about him. Right there in Esterhazy's workplace, he gave her the other sword to hold, and she almost got him again. It's quite something. And then he's been beating her fists and feet and whipping her and stuff. She's kind of this beaten creature at the moment. She's lost some spirit at this point. But even with that, here she is in the arena, and she's pleading with people, don't come, I'm not going to let you take me. And then sort of against her will, killing people. So in that way, Bonhart's got full control over it in that way. I don't think it's too much of a reach to say this is what brings her back. She wants to face this man down. Yeah. This is actually what builds the resolve in her, I think, to become who she is later. I don't know how you guys feel, but I was horrified when Sapkowski put out that statement that Ciri is evil and Geralt is good, and that's the way to read The Witcher, because I look at bits like this and there's nothing evil about her at this moment at all.
He did say that, didn't he?
Yeah, it very much does feel like a loss of innocence, and I don't think that that's inherent necessarily to her. So I would controversially disagree with the author. But I think a lot of who she is obviously a result of nurture, not nature, and the horrible circumstances in which Sapkowski himself has put her in. So, I don't know. I would probably disagree there. But I think it does feel like self-defense.
Yeah.
She is being put into this for sport. She doesn't want to comply, but is ultimately forced to in order to defend herself and keep her life. The complexity, I think, comes in when, even though she's won, even though the rabble and Bonhart and everybody is satisfied with her little performance and test, it does feel like she's lost because she is now what Bonhart wants of her. So that's, I think, the really complicated aspect of that relationship and of this scene.
The interesting thing is also that she completely realizes this as well.
Yeah.
In a moment, she's completely aware of it. And it's much like earlier in the chapter when they're in the tavern and he's stripping her naked, and she thinks she's about to be assaulted. She later recounts to Visogota that it wasn't really her in that moment. She wasn't even there, and I think that's such a visceral description of what victims feel in that moment.
It's far more common, isn't it, to freeze like that than to be able to fight back.
The disassociation.
This can't be happening to me,
Exactly. And we've known her from such a young age, and we've watched her journey up
in
until
the womb.
in the womb. And we've watched her journey up until this point, and she's at a very, very low point in her life, and all these horrible things have been happening to her, and she's dissociating. She's committing horrendous acts in self-defense. She's losing that innocence, but at the same time she's desperately trying to hold on to that innocence. Also, I feel when she later in the chapter at the end, she almost she moves to take her own life. She knows what happened. She knows Bonhart has power over her. She just did exactly what he wanted her to do, just to prove a point to himself and humiliate her and dehumanize her. She's trying to reclaim that in that moment. She can't go through with it. That's the only way out she sees in that moment. So she's just a victim in this, but also she knows she is good at killing. And when she feels, backed into a corner, that's what she'll do.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next question, about her attempt. In despair, as Charli mentioned, Ciri nearly turns her sword on herself. How do you guys think this moment compares to other times where she's disassociated to survive? So the Korath Desert, or even earlier in the chapter when Barnhart demands that she undress. As Bonhart also says, how might this moment also highlight the limits of Kaer Morhen's teaching?
I don't know why he's throwing shade at Kaer Morhen at this point. It's like it would be a very short-lived school of witches if you learn how to kill yourself as part of your training. I just, don't know where he's coming from with that. I think he's trying to say she doesn't have courage. She doesn't have the, that it would take courage to take this act and kill yourself. But I think he's just wrong. It's just for her to want to kill herself, she'd have to abandon all hope. And she's literally been given a sword called hope. That's the whole symbol of it. I like to think that that's the reason why she's not finished yet. There's still something that she could get out of this. But no, it is. It's very affecting though when she leans over the sword like that. It's even knowing it's like, well, I'm sure it's not going to end this way. But at the time when I first read it, it was like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
It's quite alarming.
Like that Nilfgaardian in the audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
He realizes what's about to happen and he's like, no, don't do that, girl. Bonhart is just cruel for the sake of being cruel. He hates witches. He views them as less than human. I think we've got at this by this point in the book, right?
Mhm.
He just holds a grudge and has made it his life's mission to like kill them and give them a hard time, apparently. He's just parading her in front of the audience or the world, quote unquote, and wants to be proven right, that he had the right idea about who she is, right? And
Yeah.
in the process, he dehumanizes her. He views her as less than human because of her witcher training. He's just doing it for the sake of it. And that's so fucked up.
I definitely agree with both of you. More than anything, it almost seems like a writer's efficiency to have Bonhart realize where Ciri's from so he doesn't have to do it any other way. So it's very quick and it's just like, oh, Bonhart now knows who Ciri is. Easy peasy. We don't have to like faff around with that for like 8 chapters because he just figures it out like magic.
With the writing, be fair, Alyssa.
Yeah.
She does fight like Geralt. All the twists and turns and, the economy of effort with cutting people and things. It's all there.
Yeah, the pieces are there, but like I always say about Sapkowski's work, very efficient. And so I think part of this scene is Ciri kind of being slapped in the face. She's spent the last few months, presumably few months, or longer, parading around with the rats, pretending to be entirely someone else. And I think Bonhart cuts that down quite quickly with what he says to her and kind of snaps her back to who she is who she was as a child. I think when we talk about like trauma response across like in general and then also over the course of The Witcher, like it is that kind of like reversion to childhood and reversion to like patterns of behavior. So we kind of hear that she did the same when she was in Brokilon, after the fall of Sintra, again at the Korath Desert, and then, throughout this episode. So I think that this is just another reminder that she is in over her head, that she's not in Kaer Morhen anymore.
Click heels.
Yeah. Return home.
Yeah.
Just rage quit.
The chapter will have the cottage and the marsh bits in
Yeah.
it. And the only things that ever change in there is the time of day and what the light is that's showing the description of what the two people inside are doing. And this one's just sitting there, staring, both of them, just nothing to say, just trying to internalize this. But I do think this is like the birth of self-reliance in Ciri at this point, that it was all bravado, maybe with the rats and things. This is the point at which the seed really starts to grow in her about who she wants to be and stuff, and how she wants to deal with what's happened to her.
The return home bit just sparked a thought in my head. Do you think if it were possible for Ciri in that moment to click her heels and return home to Kaer Morhen, would she do it? Or would she be ashamed? Would she want to face her loved ones in that moment?
Yeah. Is this like her instantly teleporting now? Or is this her saying, I take back everything and I want to Back to the Future it, to like me being a child in Kaer Morhen, just redo all this again because fuck this? Or is it just like, I need to face Vesemir right now and own up to what is happening?
Yeah, instant teleport.
Okay.
I don't think she's ready for it yet. I think she needs to do some more introspection. There's the other chapters where she's figuring stuff out as well and just explaining a certain beat to these cutbacks to the cottage and things, that there's a reason for the repetition and how it's part of the healing being demonstrated in the writing.
Yes.
But it's also, I think, we can't overlook the fact that by the end of the book, one of the reasons she's going to the tower is that Visigotta proposes the idea that, if you get to that tower, you could jump back to Thanet. That's one of her reasons to go there at that time. She doesn't know what's going to happen when she goes through the portal in the Tower of the Swallow. And obviously we know something very different happens, but, that's actually what her goal is. So it is quite interesting, but she's not ready yet.
That's what I feel. That's why I asked, because I don't think she'd do it, even if she knew she could. I don't think she would.
I think at this specific moment in the pit, she might do it out of desperation and then regret it later. If she could just basically magic out of there and be like, bye, and then have no consequence, I think she would probably just launch herself back home. But I do think, as you said, Softie, there's so much work and so much character development to come that obviously wouldn't have. And I think she would still be wrestling with the demons and still be wrestling with the loss of the rats and Geralt and Yennefer, even if she did end the night in her own bed, as it were.
She's still feeling abandoned by them at this point, isn't she? She learns a little more as the book goes on. She kind of changes her perspective.
That ends up ultimately kind of taking us to the end of the chapter. Ciri reflects with Visigotta on her inability to end her own life down in the pit. But as we look at the chapter as a whole, how would you guys say figures like Skellen, Hovenagel, and Bonhart embody different faces of systemic cruelty, whether that's political, economic, and personal? And then ultimately, which one do you find the most unsettling?
Loaded question.
So Skellen, in the beginning of the chapter, while he's taking a look at the Hansa that's been assembled for him, he kind of has a look at them and he's like, aside from his own political ambitions, he's like, if politics weren't a thing, how I would love to raid and pillage and rape with these company of people. That kind of inserts itself quite abruptly in the rest of his inner monologue. Hovenagel has an entire conversation with Bonhart about land fraud and how to improve his capital and his personal weird little empire by having Bonhart as a enforcer to make sure that people give the land that's been given to them to him so that he can subsequently make his own money off of it. And this is not the first time he's done that, he says. And then Bonhart, his one-on-one cruelty with Ciri is obviously well documented throughout the course of this chapter, so I won't really belabor that. But yeah, lots of very different forms of cruelty and evil and motivation in this chapter.
Yeah, so Skellen wants to find and kill Ciri and is so relentless in his pursuit of her because he wants to kill her to further his political goals, because he thinks that way he can topple the Nilfgaardian Empire and establish a constitutional monarchy and then a democracy. At least that's what he says. But at the same time, we know that he knows that people are dumb and can be easily manipulated. So I don't know what his end goal is with all of that, but okay. Hovenagel is just a capitalist asshole. And he's in it for his own gain, willing to, carry it out on the backs of the people. He's giving them the carrot and the stick, games to keep their minds off things, while at the same time probably taxing them insane amounts of money or whatever. What's his job again? I forgot. Is he just a merchant, a businessman, like a loner?
At this point, he's just officially just a merchant at this stage, but depressingly we know from Effenberg and Talbot that he goes on to be even more powerful, and he's never called out on his bullshit. It's just awful,
because that's what these type of people do. So it's a very he doesn't care for the people. They think he does because that's what he tells them, and he gives them some money and some nice little games, but ultimately he's just out for his own gain. And then also it was so interesting to me, because going back to Esterhazy in this chapter, who was to Bonhart, like, in my home, you treat the girl with human decency. And Hovenagel, when they enter his shop or home or whatever, he greets Ciri and bids her welcome in his establishment. And Bonhart is like, no, you don't have to pay her any mind. And he's like, come on, we can operate with some human decency. So he's also on about that, albeit in a very insincere way, like a way that feels way more insincere than what Esterhazy said.
Yeah, nice, not kind, kind, not nice, sort of thing.
If she's not being offered any prize money, she's not going to fight.
Yeah.
That's what his whole deal is. He doesn't give a damn about it.
Yeah.
Again, it's the Sapkowski, with his whole economics eyes that he puts on things, that it sets The Witcher aside from nearly every other fantasy I've ever read. They're normally just nonsense. The king just happens to have a treasury full of jewels and stuff. And where do they come from? It's like, it just magically appears, all this stuff, and there's no one's ever paying taxes or anything. And this has got it all down, and it's really intriguing that at this point they're talking about, well, there's a new deal coming up, where they're moving into the slopes and stuff, where people are going to be offered 8 ox gangs of land, and we need to get in on that. What's intriguing there is an ox gang is the amount of land that a single oxen could plough in an agricultural year. And the reason they're being offered 8 is that typically oxen plough in teams of 8. So you're actually giving each farmer a big enough area to farm that they could have their own team of oxen and everything. So not sharing or anything. So this is quite an interesting number to have picked just out of random like this. But what's really funny is in the next chapter, when people are getting to read Bruna, they're being told, oh, and of course, if you sign up, you get 6 ox gangs of land. And it's like, oh my God, they've already swindled 25% of it before these guys even get a look in.
Yeah.
And it's like every layer of this is just, this corruption. You can just see it everywhere. And knowing that this turd has just floated to the top and he's going to get away with it because Effenberg and Talbot have told us that, it's just so depressing. And it's like this kind of lawless state that we're seeing here. The idea that a kleptocracy arises in it and stuff, it's all around us in the modern world. We don't have to look very far at all to see this today either. It's really dispiriting.
I think, regrettably, just like looking at the practicality that he outlines in like income and commerce and like just the cruelty with which he operates his business. And I guess it's not necessarily dissimilar from like both Skellen and Bonhart in that like the ends justify the means. Like I still get rich, like fuck everybody else. And I think we all know people who fall into that category of people. And so I think, again, looking at it over the span of the 30, 40 years in which it was written, it feels very evergreen.
Yes. And especially in today's world as well, I might say. So, I don't know.
Sadness.
But I still think, which do I find most unsettling? Honestly, I think it would have to be Bonhart still, because there's a sort of method to the cruelty and evil in Skellen and Huvernagel. I mean, Skellen is a spy and he murders and whatnot people, but we know that he has a certain goal, so the things he does, he will do with that goal in mind, ultimately. At least that's what he tells himself, I suppose. But Bonhart is just in it for the sake of it. He doesn't care about the fate of the world at large. He doesn't care about destiny. He just wants to, for whatever reason, we don't even know really why he hates witches so much and why he has it out for them and why he's just a sadist, and he just finds pleasure in dehumanizing people that he doesn't feel are human, which in this case Ciri or witches, so I don't know. We don't really learn where that comes from, do we? But I feel like there must be a part in him that's very insecure or something, because where does that come from? And he's so unpredictable. I feel it makes him so unpredictable. The others maybe are more predictable with their cruelty in that way, but he could tie you to a chair and pull out your 2 front teeth without a reason,
Yeah.
And that's scary.
I think I would agree. Maybe it's just growing up in the world that we have and like being desensitized in some way to like political and economic corruption. There is something incredibly unsettling about Bonhart's sadism, as you said, Charlie. Like his introduction in Baptism of Fire is him talking about like, I just love killing people. You can never find someone who loves their job as much as me, not even a whore. And it's like, what kind of crazy person? He's doing it because he loves it. He's doing it because it's fun. He's doing it because it gives him some sort of sick pleasure. Again, like, Skellen and Huvanagel's motivations are kind of like, eh. Like Skellen has some vision for Nilfgaard, and in the meantime, he is operating like as an imperial force. Huvanagel is just looking out for his own personal financial gain. Gross, but also par for the course in any sort of like commercial world. And then Bonhart is like,
It's funny because I'm completely different on this.
Oh,
Really?
tell me
Wow.
more. Yeah, tell me more.
I totally take Charlie's point about Skillen's political motivations. It's just most people dismiss it as pie in the sky, and then they laugh at him later on in in the saga when he's, he's a figure of fun for it. But I think my concern is, and it's dealt with in the next chapter, is, when they talk about the people who are supposed to maintain the law and stuff. When you get this sort of authoritarian regime and stuff, that it's the worst people that get put into those jobs. Like if you're routinely impaling people and stuff. Well, the people who are going to step into the jobs to be like the local law are going to be people who like impaling people. These aren't the kind of people that you want to actually, running your civilization. So I despise Huvanagel, everything he stands for. I think Skellen is supposed to be a hand of justice in the area, and he isn't. He's up to no good. Bonhart, horrible man though he is, he's just a bad man. And these, Huvanagel, you'd think is the person who's, wants to have, the economy running well and stuff so that he can run his business and everything. The guy who's supposed to be the imperial coroner is interested in, law and order and stuff. These should be the people who would want rid of Bonhart, but actually they both want him on the scene. They're actually enabling this evil man. And so the evil man isn't the problem. It's the fact that he's being enabled is the problem. So I think Bonhart's the least of it. I think a couple of crossbowmen could probably sort him out very quickly, but no one's interested in taking him down.
I do agree with you, actually. I think there's different angles to view this from, right? You could ask a question, which I find most unsettling, on a personal level. Like,
gosh, yeah.
For me personally, or for any person, when it only concerns like your well-being, the well-being of your loved ones, blah, blah, blah. And that's so interesting about, actually, that's super interesting, actually, because of Esterhazy and what we said earlier, that he's like he's trying to help, but he's still being complicit, and with like the systems that are in place. Because you can also ask, do I find Bonhart, Huvanagel, or Skellen more unsettling on a quote unquote global or regional or political scale? And in that sense, I would definitely say Skellen, Huvanagel, he's institutionalized, I don't know, capitalism, late stage capitalism, and all of the bad stuff that goes on in the world today is because of people like him, or a lot of the bad stuff that goes on in the world today is because of people just like him. They don't care about the small folk, they just care about their own financial gain. So yeah, there's that angle you can view it from. But in terms of most unsettling, when I think of like, if this were a horror movie and I'm like, these are the three villains and who's the most unsettling, I definitely feel like Bonhart is the most unsettling in the sense that he just terrifies you on a very primal and close level, on a very just unsettling, because you never know what he's gonna do. Like, he doesn't need a reason to like kill you on the spot. And the other two maybe are more like, do I gain anything by killing you? Like, they're weighing their options, which is also unsettling, but not on that primal level.
It is tough, I think, to have like characters operate in a world that works so systemically against them at all different sides of their humanity. What a freaking chapter, I think, to talk about and to unpack. So as we come to the end of our discussion, at the end of our episode, Charli, Softie, do you guys have any final thoughts on Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 4?
I hope Ciri makes it.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
It's an incredibly memorable chapter. And
yes.
It surprises me how early on it is in the book as well, because it sits with you, that arena sequence, and it almost feels like that should be the climax but it isn't. It's quite something as powerful as that. It's just a smaller part of the story. With Esterhazy, one of the things that was really interesting was that Bonhart had sent Ciri's measurements and things through, so we know she's 5'9" and only 112 pounds, so she's incredibly willowy and slender. You also look at her and think, CD Projekt Red probably did it really well, in The Witcher 3. I mean, she's a little older in that, and it was obviously filled out a little bit. But, again, they've kept her that very, very slender frame, which you'd have to be as light as that.
Yeah.
Hard times with the rats, clearly. As she says, what am I doing? Having to eat oatmeal, washing a stream,
It was not a fun chapter. It was hard to read because it's Ciri and we know her so well and we want her to be okay.
It's her lowest point, though, isn't it, Charli? Can only get better from here, surely.
Surely. It is one of the lowest points. One of several. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's all part of her journey. And like you put so beautifully, Softie, earlier, it's maybe the most impactful moment in her decision to like fight against that and like overcome that and rediscover a lost part of herself, maybe. Yeah, just finding back to the light in a way. But yeah, she's definitely not evil. She's just been put in impossible situations and she doesn't know how to cope with them and is trying to and is, trying to defend herself and survive and feeling let down by the people she loved and that loved her and needs to find a way. So in hindsight, it's an amazing chapter for Ciri's growth.
Yeah.
It's just a very layered chapter in the way it's told narratively with all the different perspectives and also the 3 villains we discussed, each of them showing a different like facet of where people's cruelty can come from and what motivations can be for people's cruelty.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. This is a hard chapter to read. And I think it's funny coming off of the heels of recording the next episode, chapter 5. It's like there's 2 entirely separate films happening here. Like there's kind of this silly, meandering kind of like dramedy of the Hansa bumbling their way through the slopes to find these druids, and like they hit some beekeepers and then they go off to do other things, and it's all a bit bumbly. And then meanwhile Ciri is on this like horror thriller action track that is just the worst sides of humanity and the absolute gutter that she's found herself in. So it is quite hard to come back to these chapters, and I think what helps is kind of analyzing them and being able to take a look at like, oh, if we take a step back, this is actually kind of a cool thing that Sapkowski did with all these different types of greed, whether or not it was an intentional choice to make. But yeah, I think we're at a very compelling part of her story, and it only, speeds up from here. We covered everything from the slaughter of the rats to the next like couple weeks or month after quite quickly, and it is exemplary of Sapkowski's writing style and really how much he can do with like 40 to 50 pages, because it is just mind-boggling. So hard read, but a good one, and we hear a lot about the situation in which Ciri has found herself, and we can only go forward from here. Yeah.
They say there's a lot of Shawshank before you get to the redemption.
That is it for our show today. Charli, Softie, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our Hansa for listening. You can find both of today's guests in the Hansa Discord at bit.ly/the Hansa Discord, and next episode, join us as we continue our discussion with Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 5. Yay!
Thanks for having us. It was fun, as always.
Hey, that was a good episode, I think.
Thanks for joining us at the Breakfast Table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandbeauclair.com. Breakfast in Beauclair is created by Alyssa from Good Morning. It's hosted by Alyssa. The show is edited by Alyssa and Caleb Byes, with music by Alex Berner. Breakfast in Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City, with Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Charlotte from Ingberg, Lamride, the original Roach, Libby, John of Verblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Keith, the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, and we moved to Maria, Softie, Lisa C., and Sidna. Special thanks to Charli and Softie for joining us for this episode, and our international Hansa for their support.